Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of F1 22, my team career mode here on the channel. I hope you're all having a great day. We're headed to Monza here today for the Italian Grand Prix. Very excited for this one and hopefully getting some redemption after last season. So if you remember back to season 1 last season, we actually retired a little bit before the halfway point of this Grand Prix due to a mechanical failure. So hoping to not have that happen here today. I'm a little bit concerned here because, you know, as many improvements as we have made with Trackhouse, we do still appear to be struggling when it comes to tracks that focus more on the straight line speed. So we are probably going to be in for a bit of a rougher Grand Prix here today in Monza compared to some of the ones that we've had recently with some great results recently. May I mention here in Zandvoort as well as back to Spa and whatnot. So things have been going pretty well since the summer break for this Trackhouse Racing team with Porcher getting some points as well there. And hopefully we can continue into today and have a good run. But like I said, I think the odds are a little bit lower here in Monza due to the fact that it is a very straight line heavy circuit here. But I can see myself in free practice one getting some laps under my belt and felt pretty comfortable with the car, so that was a plus there. I didn't feel like I was, you know, out of character, I guess you could say, but we would come through every single lap and we were setting about half a second or so faster than our race strategy time delta. So things were looking, like I said, overall pretty good so far. Now the one thing I was actually end up lacking in was actually the qualifying pace in this car. So we put on the soft compound tire, and unfortunately that was the one delta time that I could not beat. I would struggle quite hard to beat that. You can see on this final corner here now just over 3.5 tenths, now 4 tenths of a second slower than that delta, so things weren't looking very good for that. So we crossed the line though. We didn't set the fastest lap at that point in the session, but it says that it's expecting us to qualify in 22nd. You do see we have a grid penalty, 10 positions, so we have changed out our energy store component and we have now taken a third and extra component, so therefore we will be giving up 10 positions on the grid, knowing where we usually qualify, and now going into Monza where we might not be as strong because of the straight line speed, we are definitely going to be starting from the back of the grid. My intentions, however, have not changed. I'm still going to try and advance as far as I possibly can into qualifying because, well, you never know what's going to happen with other drivers getting grid penalties, but as well, just trying to get a feel for what kind of true raw pace we have in this Trackhouse machine. So qualifying first qualifying session underway here behind Zhou Guanyu in that Alfa Romeo. Keep in mind, Alfa Romeo next season going to be switching over to Audi, who's buying them out. So their final Italian Grand Prix here for Alfa Romeo now, as we would love to see an Alfa Romeo Ferrari victory or something like that. One of those two teams here today. We crossed the line for our first lap. It was only P5, which would shuffle us down a little bit further. As you can see myself actually trying to get that slipstream, but like I said, it would shuffle us down a little bit further later in the session. But I did make a second attempt here at a lap because of that slipstream. It was so strong that we had found an extra tenth out of it. Unfortunately, by the end of the lap though, I had kind of given it up, and then I built it back up on the exit of the corner, and it's going to stay around that 1/10 of a second mark, which wasn't the improvement I was necessarily looking for. So we come through to our second and final attempt here in qualifying one, and currently P16, so it's very, very close, right on that fine line on if we're going to make it or if we're not going to make it here now. As of course we want to be, of course, in that top 16 to advance now as we come through, setting a bit of a slower time in sector 1 but faster in sector 2, and it was very close in sector 3. Looks like it's going to be about another tenth of a gain, a tenth and a half. Is that going to be enough though to the line? It's going to put us currently P9. However, a lot of people would end up going quicker, and we would unfortunately not advance into Q2. Our team at the tail Porcher, P13, and look at us, all the way down to P20, about 3 tenths behind Porcher. A rough qualifying effort there, and same for Stroll as well as Daniel Ricciardo. We got some work to do, obviously, a little bit down on pace compared to our teammate of Porcher. Let's head to the grid from the back of the grid in Monza.
We're back in Italy once again for another round of the Formula One World Championship. And what a great race is in store for us today, here at the oldest circuit on the calendar, which hosted its first race all the way back in 1922. We're 12 miles northeast of Milan for today's Grand Prix at a Monza circuit where we can expect top speeds of around 215 miles per hour. 11 corners on this 3.6 mile track, with 7 of those coming in the form of chicanes. And with a good slipstream and DRS open, there should be plenty of opportunity for some passing here today. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. Max Verstappen put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he'll start from pole position. And starting next to them is George Russell. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Hamilton, Vettel, Sergio Perez and Leclerc, Bottas, Ocon, Sainz and Pierre Gasly, Albon, Mick Schumacher, Kevin Magnussen and Oscar Piastri, Norris, Stroll, Yuki Tsunoda and Théo Pourchaire. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Latifi, Joe, Golden Boy and Daniel Ricciardo fills the last spot on the grid. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today? Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the rundown into turn one, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
Ready to go, lights out. Unfortunately, we can, by the way, see we are on a medium to hard compound tire strategy, but unfortunately, I was stupid and I loaded out of the game before I could get replay cameras. So there's not going to be any replay camera shots for this episode, apart from the ones where I was making passes and whatnot that I was able to get live while we were recording, but I wasn't able to get any post-race replay cameras like what was happening with other drivers and whatnot for the most part. Several drivers got grid penalties, so that puts us P21 still in front of Ricciardo here, as it's going to be 5 red lights from the Italian Grand Prix in Monza. It's lights out and we are underway. It's Verstappen and Russell, that front row, but you got the likes of Hamilton and Vettel up there as well. It's a horrendous start for myself here now, as we immediately drop back behind Ricciardo as we head down into turn 1, braking a little bit early here, trying to play it safe now behind Nicholas Latifi. Yellow flags come out. We're going so slow down here into this first chicane now, as you can see, just a slow crawl through these corners now. Max Verstappen would lead the way on the exit of turn 1, but now as we head down to that second chicane here, lots of chicanes here in Monza. We were all over again the back of Ricciardo in that Alfa Romeo. Not an opportunity to get the elbows out and look up the inside, trying to of course get that position back if possible, but it was looking like it might be a little bit difficult here now as we come through towards the now second long straightaway here, the DRS straightaway that will open up here in a couple laps time, and you can see they were scrapping it out in front of us through the next chicane. That was Ricciardo. Latifi continuing to go at it down towards that final corner. Speaking of the start, by the way, Sebastian Vettel was actually able to get up into second place, so Vettel with a great start there for Red Bull Porsche. Puts the Red Bull Porsche in P1, P2. Latifi, Ricciardo, the Australian and the Canadian, they nearly run into each other there, and that opens the door for me to get a little bit closer as their fighting, though, is allowing the car's head to pull away. George Russell at the end of lap 1 is into the pit lane, so I'm assuming Russell had picked up some wing damage with some contact there on the opening lap. Now a lunge up the inside of Ricciardo, but he lunges to the outside of Latifi, so we ended up gaining absolutely nothing in the long haul here now as we're trying to get alongside Daniel. Can't quite pull it off, but now tucking in behind him with the with the ERS on overtake and the slipstream. We're now going to launch to the left-hand side. We're going to be pretty even with him into the braking zone. We're going to have to brake pretty deep into the corner, maybe a little bit too deep up the inside of Nicholas Latifi, who hops over the curb. We do a little bit of a switchback. He went off circuit as well. That was me forcing the issue, and it did not mean to even send my car there, but nonetheless, the pass was complete. We would continue on, and we would now run down Lando Norris as well as Théo Pourchaire. Norris runs out of the back of Pourchaire there into turn 1, shatters the front wing completely off the car, so he would be off the pace, especially in these double right-handed corners, and that would allow us to have an opportunity to pass him with the DRS here momentarily now, as that DRS is going to open it right there, and it's same for Norris, but still not enough there, and you can see there is no front wing at all on that car, on that McLaren of Lando Norris. That is a lot of damage, and he will of course be into the pit lane at the conclusion of lap number 3 here now, as we come through a little bit later. Lance Stroll going for a bit of a spin here through the chicane, but actually was able to do a quick 360 and get it back going, so we wouldn't get out in front of him. Gain another spot up at a P17 is Tsunoda. He goes wide as as well after locking up. So there's another spot up to P16, P15, P16 here for Trackhouse and Porcher there in front of us as we try to run down our teammate there. As he would actually continue to scrap it out, he would get past Zhou Guanyu, and now I was trying to, of course, work on the back of that Alfa Romeo. Now the pit cycle was looking like it was going to open about lap 12. That's when we're planning to come in to put on that hard compound tire strategy. Last season, if you remember, we didn't even make it to the first pit stop before our engine failed, so this is going to be our first time actually getting to pit here in Monza. Now, as you can see, a big moment for myself in that final corner with some oversteer. Thankfully, we would hang on, but look at the ground we lost now. 1.2, 1.3 seconds behind the cars ahead. Fortunately, they were battling enough to where we could run them back down. Zhou actually continuing to move himself forward and got past Carlos Sainz, who would get closer to Porcher after he passed both Porcher and Sainz, like I said there. And now Porcher's making a move on Carlos in the McLaren as we head down into that final right-hander here. And they're going to be wheel-to-wheel, and Sainz, he's going to back out of it, open the door for myself to get right up there on that rear diffuser now of the Spaniard here as we head down this front straightaway. Lap 9 begins, and here we go to the left side. We got a huge run down this front straightaway. Could we even pass our teammate to Porcher? We got enough of a run to make a move. We can't let this go, so we're going to lunge one up the inside of Porcher here into turn 1 and lock up a little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact there into turn 1. He goes wide in turn 2, runs us now off the circuit, a warning for a collision with Porcher. Sainz is going to take position, and here goes Yuki Tsunoda as well to take the position, but hold on, we're not done yet. This scrap continues now to the left side of Tsunoda we go, but now he goes to the right side of Sainz. I look for 3 wide here at the chicane, but I think better if I back out, let them maybe have at it. Now Tsunoda with a terrible corner. We're going to do a bit of a switchback, take the opportunity there, and we're going to now be able to gain one of those positions back here on Yuki Tsunoda as we go and try to run Carlos Sainz back down and pass him once again there for what would put us back into the top 15. Not looking like points is going to be a very realistic objective here, unfortunately, in this Italian Grand Prix, but all over the back of Carlos Sainz here now on lap 9, come to lap 10. You see me asking Mark about Sainz, wondering if there's potentially damage there to the Spaniard's car, because Carlos really struggling right now for pace in that McLaren with not much of an explanation behind it. But however, we do get past him as I lock up there down into turn 1 as we continue on now to lap 12. Our pit window would come open here now, so we're coming in at the end of this lap for that hard compound tire. I actually started saving some fuel on this lap because you can see my fuel was down to 0.3 to the good. We were quickly losing fuel just like in the last episode, but then a dilemma comes up.
It looks like we might have an issue. Hang in there, we're attempting to manage it.
We have not heard those words out of Mark's mouth very often this season, so that makes me a little bit concerned when I hear those words come out of Mark's mouth over the radio now. Pit cycle has started there for a bunch of the front runners. I decided until we know what's going on with this car, I am not going to come into the pit lane, so I'm going to remain on the circuit to see what happens here. So far, so good here now as we head down this front straightaway, waiting for an update on Mark. What's he going to tell us here now as we're coming through, passing the Ferrari of Leclerc, but there it is, the engine is exploding, and that is going to be the first mechanical failure of the season for us here, and it happens on Monza again, and that's going to be the second season in a row that we've had a mechanical failure in the Italian Grand Prix. We have yet to make it to the halfway point or even to a pit stop in the Italian Grand Prix. A very disappointing end there and an early end to our day. And yeah, I mean, at the same time, can I be really too disappointed because, you know, we've made it this far into the season without a mechanical failure? It could have been a lot worse, and you know what, we do have the worst reliability on the grid, so it kind of makes sense to expect those failures, but we've been lucky this season. Look at the podium, by the way. Sebastian Vettel, who won in the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, has won again. He has now won the Italian Grand Prix. He could not do it with Ferrari, but he could do it with Red Bull Porsche here. So very happy to see my favorite driver winning his second race of the season. Is it too late for Vettel to make a push for the World Drivers' Championship against Max Verstappen? Very likely the case. It's going to be very difficult for him to beat Verstappen now, especially going into Singapore. I really could see Verstappen tearing it up there compared to anybody else there. So as well, Valtteri Bottas and Verstappen respectfully on the podium as well. well joining Sebastian Vettel. On the ending, we were of course hoping for here in Italy, because like I said, I wanted to at least make it to a pit stop, at least make it halfway. We haven't done that yet in the Italian Grand Prix, 2 seasons in a row that we have a mechanical failure. If you guys remember back to last season, we actually went back to back. We had a mechanical failure here in Monza, and then we went to Singapore and had a mechanical failure there as well later in that race. So it was quite late, if I remember correctly, in that race when that happened, only a few laps to go. So we're hoping that doesn't happen this time around, because Singapore is my favorite circuit in the whole world, as many of you know by now. So I would like to be able to finish my first Singapore Grand Prix. Lance Stroll as well had a DNF at some point in that race after his first pit stop. Poor Chair there, our teammate in 14th place. Let's take a look before we end the episode at the standings now. Verstappen with a 47-point lead over Lewis Hamilton, 75 over Leclerc, 86 over Sebastian Vettel. So at this point, it really is going to be Verstappen versus Hamilton. However, Hamilton's going to need to get on a bit of a late season charge if he wants to close in that gap to Max Verstappen, as we as well looking for upgrades here towards the end of this episode, trying to get this car a little bit further and further. We are going to have some upgrades coming in before the Singapore Grand Prix, because we do have that couple of off weeks in between now and the Singapore weekend. So that is going to be very beneficial for getting some more upgrades in this car, and hopefully we can bring a little bit more speed to Singapore, and hopefully, actually, I think we could have a pretty competitive car there. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in the streets of Singapore. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Those all would be so much appreciated. And of course, as well, with that mechanical failure, we are going to be taking a grid penalty again in Singapore. So not the ideal start, but we will deal with it when the time comes. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day, everybody.